Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. First of all, kudos to you. I know the feeling of learning in public and being the technical person when you don't feel super into being the technical person. So you nailed it. I'm really, really excited to be with you all today to share some of the AI adoption patterns that we've been seeing that have worked. And just first, a little bit about me. If you don't know me, my name's Meg Smith, and I'm one of the co-founders of Cloverbase and the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. So my co-founder, Mark Smith, has been in the Power Platform and Dynamics community for many years. He's an MVP, and together we've been working over the last couple of years on how in our business, we've been doing enablement training for Microsoft staff. So that involves us at the moment really looking at this question of how is Copilot being adopted, and how can we help sales teams and technical experts to really bring this AI platform to life for the organizations that are looking to adopt it. And then we also run the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, which is a career program for people who work in this space. And we've got lovely participants and alumni on the call today. So thank you so much for joining and for sharing your, expertise with the world, which is really at the heart of what we encourage people to do through the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. It's for you to understand what it is that you want to offer the community and your customers that you work with, and be able to articulate your value so that you can also get that job, get that contract, go to whatever the next level of success looks like for you. So that's a little bit about me. There's a couple of adoption patterns that I want to talk about today. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. In fact, Mike and I are writing a book on some of the 12 patterns or the 12 ideas of co-pilot adoption that we're seeing across organizations around the world who are winning with co-pilot and really adopting AI. These are just the three I wanted to focus on today because we've seen them across some of those early adopter program stories that you might be familiar with if you've had a look at Copilot. Now, I know this is a Power Platform user group. We also think that the Power Platform community are some of the best place to really lead in the Copilot world because of so much requires, and I know Shamim's going to talk about business data in the next session, but so much of a successful AI adoption relies on a successful data strategy. So I'm going to be talking about AI today, knowing that the role of the people in this user group is often coming from the Power Platform perspective. I think that's a really great place to come at it. So the three patterns I want to talk about are executive sponsorship and why that's actually proven to be critical in successful AI adoption. We want to talk about change management on purpose, and the role of champions communities. Before I do that, I've shared in the chat a link to the Miro board. If you've just joined, I might just re-share that because I know sometimes you can't necessarily see what's been shared before you joined. So if you can, jump on across to Miro. Before I start talking about those three patterns, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you probably feel this as well, I imagine, in your roles, that's at the moment there's so much hype around AI. Sometimes it feels like the goal or the ask is we just need to do AI. We need AI in this project. We need to make sure that it's got AI in it. Tell me about AI. But it's really important to understand why what we're trying to achieve, what is the problem we're trying to solve. So before I jump in, I'd love if we could jump over to the Miro board. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can access that, if you've been able to join? Oh, I can see some people on the board. Fabulous. So if you can't, if you need to zoom out, you've got controls to zoom in or out. This is we're going to do a what's on your radar exercise. So the idea with what's on your radar is you can grab any one of these post-it notes. You should be able to grab and edit them and add your comments or add your thoughts. You can also, if you can see this menu on the left, you'll be able to add a sticky note as well if you would prefer. And what I'd love you to do is think about, how do we measure success when it comes to AI implementations, AI projects, AI strategy. So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. So give us all 5 minutes. Start firing away your ideas. The way that the radar works is we're going to get sort of what we think are the most important into the middle of the circle. The next important or secondary importance goes in the outer ring, and then the last is sort of tertiary importance. If you feel really strongly about the importance of your idea, feel free to plot it on the radar. Otherwise, just leave it off to the side, and we'll spend a little bit of time together discussing where we think the importance. So the question is, how can we measure success of AI adoption, and what ideas can we use for continuous improvement once we've had that first success? Sound good? Cool. I'm going to set a timer here. And I do have some music, but I think you might not be able to hear it based on how I've shared. No music? No, okay.
You can hear the music.
You can hear it? Oh, fab.
Yeah.
Sharon can't. No, that's funny. Hey James, just to explain too, in case you missed it, so we're just putting ideas onto the board about how we can measure success of AI adoption. Like, how do we know we're winning? How do we know it's successful? And then we'll have a little chat about it.
Rightio, thanks.
Awesome, great ideas coming through here. We'll have another couple minutes and then have a chat. And I'd love if you want to volunteer. I will ask for volunteers, or else just start asking for specific people. But if you've got an idea that you want to share and start to plot it on the radar, feel free to start doing that. Brilliant. Looking great here. Another couple seconds. Just checking I've got them all. Cool. Awesome. Wow, there's some brilliant ideas here. Thank you, everyone. I'd love to ask the person who wrote, I love the matching too of the pink post-it note to the pink circle in the middle, accurate answers, insights, and info you can trust. Does the person who wrote that want to say a little bit more? Hey, Shamim.
Hi. Yeah, because I think especially now, for example, Copilot in Power BI, there's like a little message at the bottom that says inaccurate answers are possible. Can you hear me, or is it there's like an echo? Can you hear
Oh,
me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so I think users quickly kind of lose trust in it if the answers that they are getting are not, are not accurate, and then they just stop using it basically because they think, it's not useful. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I love that. And it relates to the idea I can see here around, does it solve a problem? We've got solving actual business problems. Can it solve a problem that was not able to be solved through business processes? Is there trust that this is valuable, right? But what about this one here? Improved customer experience and our engagement. Who wrote that, and where do we think we should put that on the radar?
Hi, Megan, Judy. And it looked like my camera is working very well, so I apologize for that. Well, it's
That's
not working.
okay.
I was thinking the overall reason for implementing these new tools is to improve the customer experience. So whether that be in surveys, so in having the trust established is really critical, I think.
Yeah.
And their engagement because they trust you and they're having a better experience is through that so-called reputation that's going to be established. You're going to get net new people knocking down your doors, and I think that is a real measure of success. That's
100%.
where it's coming from. So it's a bit high, like pie in the sky, like it. No, but everything that's written here contributes to that. But the end goal is to improve.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Audio's coming in and out a little bit, but I really like what you said there about um, coming back to why are we, in business? Who are we serving with our products and services? And is their experiences improved by our use of AI? Because it does require, again, this point down here, that trust. There's trust in the information. There's trust in the accuracy of what we're dealing with. Now, I'm just going to zoom in over here because I see I also felt a little bit bad because somebody had lined up beautifully these ones here, but then I wanted them a little bit closer to the radar. So I just want to pick one, but if these are yours, feel free to jump off mute and talk through a little bit, particularly around this retention and continuity and investment. Like, so we know we're successful if that investment continues. Who's that one?
Yeah, that was myself, David Glass, that kind of put that. Yeah, I think, with all these pieces of work that we kind of do, I think it's important to kind of just break it down into stages. So running from kind of POCs, even if you want to jump in that far, but I think it is important just to kind of take customers through that journey and be upfront on that journey. But these are kind of stage gates and pieces that we're going to stop at, just checking how we're doing. Yeah, and should we continue? Yeah, I think there's lots of questions we could ask along that journey, but I think it's important as well. But hopefully the outcome is then retention and continuing to invest in what we're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I put that quite important, right? Because it knows we're on the right track if there's value. But I think sometimes it comes down to how is that value being communicated? How have we scoped out our goals from the start? And then the measures by which we can say, yep, that's working, or no, that's not. I love that. And then I just want to spend a little bit of time up in this corner before we jump into the content a little bit. Thinking about the users and the feedback. I've kind of clustered together some ones I feel that were relevant. But if one of these is yours, feel free to come off mute and share a little bit more about the impact on the users.
So I guess the one that I put up, the use for mentorship and upskill, not just getting things done faster. In 2 or 3 years' time, when you're starting to start having a look at your graduates come through and start to try and upskill those graduates, are they just relying on an AI to do the job for them, or are they actually learning from the AI while doing that job, being supported by the AI? Because at the minute, there's quite a big opportunity where people just go, I'll just do it, copy and paste it into an AI thing, and I'm not actually learning anything. It's just sort of all being done for me. Don't give a damn. So you're not actually engaging with the topic. You're not actually learning anything. And then in 10 years' time, all those graduates are now starting to progress up the career ladder. They're all a bit useless. So making sure that you're using AI to use it to mentorship the grads as well.
Yeah, I love that, and Carl, I totally laughed at that comment. But it's true, right? That if we teach the next generation that are coming through, there's AI tools or AI-enabled technology the same way that I learned technology when I started in my career, which was very different. It was learn what the software does, click here, do this. You can learn that once, and then over your career and your experience, you're building on that. You might be adding new context on a different project, or you might be adding new skills once a quarter when there's new releases. That's not how AI technology is working anymore. We're talking about constant change. We're talking about Copilot every week or every 2 weeks having new features. So we're having to build in that resilience of what this tool can do today is not what it will be able to do tomorrow. And that's a different way to learn. I think I agree with that, James. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on the how do we measure success, because that having that intention and having that why is certainly another pattern that we've seen in the successful adoptions. But coming back to the kind of three I wanted to touch on today. The first one is executive sponsorship. And this one, I think, is we underestimate the importance of an executive sponsor. And the kind of trap is in a little bit what I've just said there. It's not an executive sponsor. It needs to be a group of people in the leadership and the organization that you're working on, whether that's the company that you work for, or oftentimes if we're working for a partner, that is going to be in the companies who are your clients, who are your customers. Who in that organization is really committed to and understands why AI is critical to that project and to the role of where that organization is going to go with AI-enabled tools. So spending a little bit of time understanding what makes a good executive sponsor is important for all of us to do, because it's going to help us spot where the sponsorship is insufficient. Thanks, David. The executive sponsor needs to be active. So they talk about the ABCs, and these actually come from ProSci, the change management certification program. It's a really great framework. We'll talk a little bit about change management next. But these ABCs of executive sponsorship, so they need to be active and visible and consistent in their approach. So it can't be like stand up at the company meeting once and say AI is important and then disappear, or never actually use Copilot themselves, or never actually show up again with that message. They need to be consistently beating that drum. And then they need to be someone who can bring their executive peers, so that's called a coalition of sponsors. And that is, the research shows, it is so important, because it can't just be one person who sticks their neck out and says, we need to be investing in this. This is important, because then it's too easy to have, priorities change, or if one person in the organization has said, this is why we should be sticking with Microsoft, then someone else might have an agenda as to why they advocating a different technology or a different thing. It really needs to be this network of leadership that have gone on that journey together, that have the right AI and data literacy baseline, so that they can build that into their strategic thinking of where the organization is going to go. And then that C is for communication. So how is that executive sponsor communicating the importance and the value of the project to their reports? Some of ProSci's research in change management highlights that the most influential person in a person's individual change journey is their manager. And so that manager needs to be able to see the executive really bought in on this, so that they can effectively communicate to their team, hey, I know you're busy. I know that we're talking about a reworking of how we operate and how we deliver our services. This is why this is important to you and your goals. This is why it's important to us and our team. And so it's really important that when we're engaging in projects, or we're even starting projects, we ask that question of, okay, so who cares about this in the organization? Who's the executive sponsor on this? How does it factor into their plans? And how are they measured? How is success measured for them? If you've got this group of executive sponsors, why do they care about this, and how will we know if it's successful? Because then we can shape so much of our messaging around those priorities. And I really like this exercise of mapping your stakeholders. So understanding where they are at, and are they someone who maybe you're needing to mentor a little bit more, or to really enable to be a great key stakeholder? Or are they someone who might be a little bit of a risk? And what other things we're actively working on there? This actually comes from the Copilot Success Kit. So if you are adopting Copilot, if you are leading this kind of change in your projects, I really recommend, I'll drop the link in the second as well. Adoption.microsoft.com has Copilot Success Kit adoption resources. And this is from there, and a couple of the slides I'm sharing are so worth having a look at if you haven't already. Another kind of mechanism that we're seeing in organizations that are, early adopters of Copilot, they're in that sort of that group or cohort of people, you'd see their names rolled out as case studies from Microsoft when talking about Copilot. My favorite one, the kind of hero case study I really dove deep into for a while, was Lumen Technologies. Has anyone read that case study? It's really powerful. It's included in a lot of the collateral, but they are an example of an organization who really jumped at their chance to be part of the early adopter program. Their coalition of executive sponsors included all of the senior leadership. The CEO is actually ex-Microsoft, so you can imagine they have this understanding of technology that might be different from other C-suites, but they were able to say, as a leadership, we're completely bought into becoming AI enabled. We're going to be rolling this out to our teams. And one of the biggest impacts they saw was rolling out Copilot for sales. So as part of Dynamics, as to their salespeople would spend on average 4 hours prepping for sales meetings, and with the help of Copilot for Sales, that reduced to 15 minutes. They could do higher quality prep for their sales meetings, and they actually then backed that out and said, well, if we're saving 4 hours per sales engagement, so per salesperson per week across a year, we're going to conservatively estimate that's worth $50 million to our organization. Based on the size of this sales force and what they could then do with that time. So when you've got that sort of value being looked for and then articulated at your executive level, and then they're looking together as an AI council. So an AI council is thinking about that cross-functional leadership group, right? It's a group of leaders from, it can be IT, HR, change. I've also seen ones where they include like an employee representative or a frontline worker representative in that, because this AI council is going to shape and hold account the organization to the way that it's using AI. Is it, there's often the AI Council will be responsible for ethical checks as well, and commitments, but also setting that direction and taking on feedback from that real life experience of their people. So there's, again, in the Success Kit, there's some really great resources there's a white paper on what an AI Council should look like. And then one of my big things at the moment is a 10 minutes a day daily practice with AI. I've been doing that and more with my friend ChatGPT for a long time now. Knows me pretty well. I'm currently investing in my relationship with Copilot. So I just wanted to share an example of how you could start a conversation with Copilot if this is the first time that you are thinking about executive sponsorship or interacting with an executive sponsor. Try this one and obviously customize it to make sense. So I've said, write a guide to being an effective executive sponsor for a transformational AI project. The executive is the head of HR for a legal practice with 1,000 staff. Change that for whoever you're working with, right? Consider the ABCs of executive sponsorship and provide an action-orientated guide. And I did this last night just to check that it returns something valuable. And what I'm really loving about using Copilot is that it was able to, in my organization's Copilot, say, hey, this is from your documents, this is from your files, here's an outcome, and then here's also an outcome from the web. So other, like, going broader. So you can imagine that if you are doing projects over time, or you've got the Success Kit and you've loaded it to your SharePoint, those are the types of files that are going to be brought into that output as well. Cool. So the second pattern I want to talk about is change management. We got any change managers on the call? No? Okay, cool. That's fine. I think change management is something that can be maybe not always included in our projects. It's something that you should become a champion for change management. We talk about this on the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge a little bit, that this role of change managers, like project managers, they're able to really be a critical component between getting from the promise or the sale of what this AI adoption project should offer to actually making that a reality. And I saw this quote from Satya Nadella just recently, where he was talking about change management in specific relation to AI. And I had two thoughts when I saw this. One, it was like awesome, right from the top, saying this is important, this is a good chance that we're going to start to see more investment in change management and realization that that's necessary. But I also, James, a little bit interpreted this as not just change management as a discipline in technology implementation, but actually how do we change how we're working? And that is, I think, for AI a little bit different than, say, a change program that's necessary when you're changing the payroll system that your company uses. Oh, awesome, Sharon. And also looking at how are we as individuals and people going on this change journey. But looking at that impact, or that the reason that change management is so important when we're rolling out new enterprise technology or new technology to the organization, is really looking at this difference between someone using a tool. So, you have a Copilot license assigned, usage. It's loading on your apps that you're using, that sometimes, depending on how your reporting is set up, can count as usage, right? But actually adoption means that people have gone from, okay, I've got access here at deployment, right the way through going on this journey to being proficient. It's been this deep habit that becomes part of everything we do. And the ProSci research there that is quoted as being, it has a 7x impact on the likelihood of success. And there's another great study that's referenced in the Success Kit, which I highly recommend going and having a look at if you're interested in human change and human behavior. And this again relates to the experience gap of change. So how do people in your organization experience change? And there's some really interesting statistics or insights from that show that how a leader who might be making the decision about this technology, how they experience change is generally more positive than their employees do. That they, when it comes to how it's communicated to them, they're often given more context about why it's important. They're often given more upskilling opportunities, and they're generally at that step closest to what's happening. Whereas if we find that there's not effective change management, there's not effective upskilling and communication, then employees become disengaged and they don't really understand why it's important to them, and we're not going to get to that kind of dream up to the top of the right of that chart, adoption and proficiency. And then I also thought this was really interesting, that's from that study as well, which I'll link in the chat in a minute. But they looked at what's the difference between high performing organizations and those that take a people-centric approach to change are reporting much stronger outcomes. They're able to drive that organizational change. So these are the differences in that survey of, say, what's typically happening when change happens. So how are their employees experiencing change compared to the high performing organizations that are getting incredibly high rates of employees saying they felt considered and respected, they felt included in decisions, they were able to give feedback and that was actioned, and they were just really encouraged to celebrate their wins through that change as well. Another prompt potentially for you to have a try. So one of the things that we learn through the change management certification, and thanks Sharon for sharing that, I'd also highly recommend doing some ProSci training if you get the chance, or if you is this one here. So act as a change manager, help me brainstorm ways to overcome resistance to change when it comes to adopting AI, provide tactics and frameworks to help me scale use of AI in my organization. One of the things that I took away from ProSci when I did my change management certification was this acknowledgement that resistance will happen. Whenever there's change, there will be resistance, and that the fact that there is resistance doesn't mean the change has failed. It's a natural part of it. So looking at some of these techniques and tactics is important. The last one Pat and I want to talk about is the importance of a champions community, and that somewhat gets nested under change management at times, but I think it exists as a pattern that's important to call out in its own right, because I've been describing when we've been looking at these case studies and what's happening in these early adopter programs to inform how we're training Microsoft staff and how we're trying to scale AI adoption. I sort of see the successful ones are really doing this tops down. We've talked about executive sponsorship, and bottoms up through the champions community. And one of those approaches on their own don't work. Whichever one, it can't just be tops down, and it can't be champions driving change from within the organization without that executive support. It's really both together. Champions, in our community is a tactic that has worked really well for a long time. I'd say you probably all are champions in the organizations or in the role that you do. We're talking about people who have found that moment where they recognize for themselves the value, and they're able to then share that with other people and really scale change. So there's a couple of things. Again, I'll send the link to the adoption.microsoft link, because the Success Kit has some really great frameworks and checklists. I also think it's worth calling out that Microsoft are highlighting the role of the champions community. It really becomes embedded in an organization's culture. So being able to customize it and adapt it to make sense within the culture of that company is going to be so much more powerful than coming in and saying, Microsoft said we should have champions, who wants to be one for Copilot? Really being able to use language. Champions might not be the right word. It might be a different, there might be an existing nomenclature, I don't think I've said that word right, but the naming convention that will inspire people to get involved within the organizations you're working in. Lean into that. But really it's about, the program should be, encouraging people who want to be trained and want to gain this knowledge, for people who are curious about Copilot, let's give them a chance to further that skill set, and encourage them to share and train their peers, because we know that peer-to-peer learning is so is much more impactful in so many ways when we're trying to drive this change. And then looking as well at how are we reinforcing that behavior? How are we celebrating their success? How are we rewarding them? That doesn't just look like, that looks different for everybody. I was saying to Mark last night when I was thinking about this, like, I can remember when I was at Google, I think they would do, honestly, like, money prizes a lot. Like, I think I won $150 for commenting on a video once internally. That it was very nice, but it wasn't more motivating to me than other benefits that might be like leadership development, or in the big scheme of things, an extra day off goes a really long way too. Really looking at, like, what is the culture of the organization, or what matters to the employees, and how can you reward them and elevate them for giving their time to become a champion. And then, yeah, really looking at, like, what is the action plan off the back of that community who work hard, meet regularly and share their knowledge, and how does that then go back up to that AI council? And Honeywell is a good example of this. I'll also share the link to an article about how they, as an organization, have embedded, they call them AI ambassadors, in each department and each business unit, that meet regularly, and then they gather feedback on use cases and what's working and what's not and what people want, and then that bubbles up to the AI Council every couple of weeks. They review that in line of other priorities, ethical, their kind of commitment to ethical AI, and then build that into the work program. So the champions are motivated to gather that feedback and share it, because they can see that it's actually being used to shape how they use AI. So I've got another example there around how we can use Copilot to help brainstorm ways to incentivize people to become those champions as well. I think that could be a good way. When I looked at the case studies, my kind of like big takeaway that I just wanted to leave you with was the companies that are winning with AI and are really changing the way that they operate, they are empowering their people to innovate with AI. They are upskilling them, like James was saying. They're giving them the time and the encouragement and the structure to not just have training one day and sort of say, great, now you know Copilot, off you go. Really looking at consistent practice over time and demonstrating the value that they're offering to the organization by doing that work. So that was what I had prepared to share. I've got questions here, but I also am really conscious that I might have gone a little bit over time. I don't want to take away from Shamim's time. So Sarah, let me know how we're going for time. I'm also happy to take questions, as a follow-up. You can message me or email me as well.
I think we can make time for a couple of questions if there are any. If we run over at the end, Shamim, I don't mind. You don't?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Cool, I'm happy with that. Any questions?
No, nothing for me. Oh, it's interesting. I've seen a few talks on Copilot and security and adoption, and it's such a big thing, isn't it? There's so much to consider. And another experiences that I have is speaking to people that are going into that role of head of AI now, into organizations that haven't had that role previously. And again, when I asked this question, do they know what they expect? What do they want from AI for the senior leadership team? And the answer was like, no. Is the data sorted out? No. And it was kind of, oh great. So what do they want from you? Like, and the other thing is, I think going into a role like that, there's a lot of people looking for these kind of jobs as well. I'm getting asked more and more, are there any jobs for head of AI? And that means something so different in so many places, doesn't it? And I think, I don't know, something that kind of crosses my mind is, if you are going into a role like that, understand the businesses, understanding before you set yourself up for a potential fall where they think you're not delivering on something they're not ready for. That's me just dumping all my thoughts that I've had over the last few weeks onto you all, but it's huge. Where do you start?
Yeah, I think we need to use I think especially I think of that same challenge, Sarah, in terms of the partner scenario. If you're supporting a lot of different organizations, how can we use Copilot to help us understand the common challenges for the roles of the stakeholders we're dealing with, whether it's head of AI, which is new. There are other roles that we're talking to, like what does a CEO think about this? How are they measured? Talk to me a little bit about the specific industry for this customer that I'm going to talk to, so that we can go in really empowered to be empathetic and to give that message based on what they're going to care about.
Definitely, because it can be quite boring, can't it, to begin with, if data strategy isn't there and there's no governance, that job isn't quite as exciting as let's just get AI doing everything.
I have Kia ora, I have a question. So last week I went to an event and it was actually Serco. So Meg probably knows Bob that runs Serco, and he's just done a big AI initiative with the business. And he said what was interesting, so it's probably more a key takeaway, is that his finance and his law department, so non-tech people, are the ones that have embraced AI the most and have really taken off. Because I asked him how he kind of adapted with the change, because they did everyone had to attend AI sessions and stuff like that. And he just said it comes from leadership, but he was just impressed that the non-tech people have embraced it and have just loved it, and how much it takes off their workload. Because I was just more curious about the change management, because I can just see that's so crucial to a business, and if you don't get it right, how it could impact putting AI into your business.
Yeah, Bob. So Serco is a New Zealand tech company that are they do, I think it's like a competitor to Concur Travel, so it's corporate travel management, and they have clients in America, and so they've got this scale, and I think they've gone through an acquisition process as well, where they've acquired companies. And I was talking to him about how are you upskilling your workforce across different roles, across different geographies. They've got people all over the world, and he, in my opinion, the way they've approached it is what more organizations need to be doing, which is going, actually, we're going to stop at this point in time, and we're going to make sure we're intentionally taking everyone in the business, not just one department, not just IT, or not just the one we're doing the use case in. We're going to make sure everyone does fundamentals training. I think, he talked about things like, I think they used LinkedIn Learning. He said they were piecing it together, but they also brought in someone, I don't know if Sarah, the role was officially head of AI, but it was essentially someone who had been doing that role at another company. So they've brought them onto their leadership team, really giving exactly like I liked, Chris, your burn at both ends. They're burning at both ends. They're going, as our executive, this is important. For people on the ground, this is important. We're not going to leave anyone behind. And then by doing that, they've found that the actual people running the processes in the organization are the ones coming up with this is how we want to use it, this is the impact it will have, rather than being told this is the use case we should start with because someone else has said, oh, other companies are doing this first. Because if we were going to, in that scenario, if we were going to go, oh, other companies are doing this first, they would have started with HR, because that's what everyone says to start with. So yeah, love that example.
I think it's a great career opportunity for those the community champions as well, isn't it? I remember years ago working in a bank in a call center, and when new systems came in and those people that championed it, they ended up working in IT or becoming something more than customer service agent or whatever it was they were doing. So anything else from anyone else, or are we ready for Shamim? Cool. Thanks, Meg. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us so early as well.
Okay,
I
I'm
love
just
that,
gonna.
by the way. That interactive bit at the start was brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome,
And can you
Shamim.
see my screen? Can you see my
Yeah,
screen? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Right. Okay, so I can't really see the chat, so I will take questions at the end, if that's okay, and respond to comments at the end. So welcome to my presentation. It's called Business Brains to Data Gains, a Literacy Revolution. So the agenda today, oh, is it working? Yeah. So here's my agenda today. So I'll be talking about data literacy versus business literacy, company maturity versus data maturity, the inconsistencies you can get with data, how to win over stakeholders, the importance of having a single source of truth when it comes to data, and building reports for adoption. So just a little bit about me. My name is Shamim Munshi. I am a Power BI developer and data consultant. I work in data analytics and the Power Platform. I'm a science and engineering graduate originally from Imperial College. I'm a qualified Scrum Master and MCT, and I'm a career changer from business admin to tech and data. I've also put the link here for my website, which is about having careers in this space, and here are my certifications. So this is a little bit of a diversion, this slide, from the rest of my talk, but I thought it was important to put this in, mostly because a few people have told me at events, and I've actually seen a few LinkedIn posts as well, where some people in the Power Platform space do not feel that Power BI belongs in the Power Platform now that it's part of Fabric. And I just wanted to explain my perspective. So I see the rest of the Power Platform tools as essentially data tools. So for example, I see Power Apps as a data collection and validation tool. I see Power Automate helping me to migrate data and automate processes. I see Copilot Studio, say if there's a chatbot that's been created in there, I see that as a data retrieval tool. So basically, I see all these tools as helping me with the quality of the data, so that by the time it gets to me at the reporting stage, it's of a better quality, and I don't have to do so many transformations before I represent it. So today we'll be focusing on reporting. So what is data literacy? Well, data literacy is basically understanding, interpreting, and using your data effectively to make better business decisions. It also allows you to spot patterns and opportunities with your business, but it also enables everyone to handle data responsibly. And as Meg was talking about AI, it's really important in this day and age to reduce security risks and improve compliance. I've just put a little cartoon here where a data professional is asking his colleagues, how do we make a business more data literate? And then one of his colleagues says, well, shouldn't we also become business literate? And then he is chucked out of a window. But the point is, whoever works with data also needs to be business literate. You need to understand the business, the nature of the business, their terminology, what their goals are, what their challenges are, what their priorities are, and in order to support them with their decision making. So I want to introduce you to a fictitious company called Chai and Coffee that was basically created last year. They have 3 branches in London, Stratford, Hackney and Greenwich. And they're at a point where they're looking to attract investors and they want to expand their business. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about the difference between company maturity and data maturity, because they're 2 different things. So imagine we had some kind of arbitrary assessment where you get a score out of 5, depending on how mature you are company-wise and data-wise. A company with high company maturity would have strong leadership, perhaps automated processes, maybe a global presence, whilst our fictitious company here is at the bottom and has a low score because it's a new company, it has a local presence, and most of its processes are manual. But you can see here, for example, you can have a multinational company with quite a high company maturity. So maybe it's got a really strong, global presence and leadership, but maybe all its data is in Excel spreadsheets. And then you can have like an online company that probably hasn't got a global presence as yet, but started off as an app, is already doing targeted marketing, using analytics for forecasting, and therefore has a high data maturity. So they're not the same thing. And when you deal with stakeholders, you need to know where they're at and meet them at their level. And so, basically a company with high data maturity is using innovative methods and predictive analytics. So if I just dig a little bit deeper into the different analytic types that businesses use to improve their decision making, most businesses are using descriptive analytics. So they're looking at what is happening. And then fewer companies are looking at diagnostic analytics, which is looking at why something is happening. And then even fewer are using predictive analytics, which is looking at what is likely to happen. And then fewer than that are using prescriptive analytics, which is looking at what action to take. And then very few companies are at this stage. And at this stage, when you're using cognitive analytics, you're looking at AI, you're probably using machine learning to mimic human behavior to inform your business strategy. So that's looking at deeper insights. So back to our fictitious company, we have the director here of Chai and Coffee and the branch managers of the 3 branches. So we've got the Stratford branch manager, the Hackney branch manager, and the Greenwich branch manager. And so, as I said before, the director's looking to expand the business. However, he's a little bit concerned at the moment because he's been looking on social media and he's seeing a lot of complaints about the Greenwich branch, about their serving times. And so he's called all his managers into a meeting and he wants to see what their data is. So he wants to compare the serving times between the branches. But as they're having this discussion, they realise they have a problem. So the Stratford branch manager is measuring the serving time from when the order is being prepped. The Hackney branch manager is measuring the serving time from when the order is placed. The Greenwich branch manager is measuring the serving time from when the system's acknowledged, when it's acknowledged in the system. And so therefore their business processes are not aligned and therefore they've got inconsistent data definitions of serving time, and you can't compare what their serving times are because they're measuring different things. And so now the director realizes they have a problem and wants to call in a data expert to help them out. So basically, you're all a consultancy, you're all consultants, and Chai and Coffee is your client. They want a sales report for a data-driven strategy to grow business. And they also want you to help them sort out their data. So what steps should you take? Well, if you think about the typical departments that are in their average business, so you're talking about senior leadership, operations, finance, human resources, etc., and you think about what teams need to be involved when you're trying to implement a data strategy, you're trying to make a data-driven culture. Well, it's all of them. All of them need to collaborate because you need to get everyone on board. You need to make them understand why is it that they need to follow a process a certain way. Why is it they need to enter a data a certain way? And then you start implementing solutions to help them with that process. But all this takes time. It's a long process. It's not something that's overnight. And so what you say to Chai and Coffee, that you're going to help them with their data strategy, and data governance and strategy is a really big topic, and I'll link to a resource at the end if you want to read more on this topic. But this is more of a long-term job that you're doing for them. But their priority at the moment is getting their report done so that they can show that to their investors. So what you need to do is you want to set up a workshop so you can gather the requirements for the report. Now, what you should do, because everyone's busy, frontline managers are busy, senior leadership probably have meetings back to back, and you want to optimize their time, basically. So what you're doing is you're trying to prepare for the workshop. And what I would always advise is, definitely research the industry, research the organization, but also look at if they're used to their data being represented in a certain way. So this is a really good website, and I've put a QR code there, which shows what chart types are prominent in what industries. For example, in finance, the profit and loss waterfall chart is quite common. In logistics, heat maps are very popular. Another thing you should do is prepare wireframing and templates. So find out what the company theme is, what their logo is, and get that prepared. A lot of people use Figma, some people use PowerPoint, and some people just use a tool like Power BI itself. Okay, so then you meet your stakeholders. The director's already told you what he wants to see in that report, but he doesn't want to be involved in the meetings in between. He just wants to see the finished product. So your next meeting is with the middle managers, which are the branch managers, and the business support team. And I just want to say something about the business support team. I've called them business support, but they're known as different things in different organizations. So they might be known as the executive team or the, business analysts or business administrators. But I like to think of them as the engine room of an organization. They tend to be, after a data team, they tend to be the most highly data literate people in the organization. They know what the challenges are because they deal with leadership, they deal with frontline staff, they deal with all different types of people, and they know what the challenges are, where the data is stored, and they can give you access as well. I would also advise that you don't meet with middle managers and other staff with senior leadership. The reason being is you often find that these groups don't vocalize what the issues are with their processes in front of managers, or not fully, basically. So you want to keep that separate. I also wanted to mention that in order to have a good success rate with your project, I would always advise asking the business support team if you can liaise with a named contact, so you can just fire off questions to them that you have during your project. So what you need to do during the meeting is you need to play data detective, because in real life, data is so messy. People stop using systems, they implement other systems, they stop using a process, they then implemented another process. There was a hacking event, there was a power cut, then they started to you use an Excel spreadsheet for data. Data is very, very messy in real life. So you need to find out all this information. You need to find out what systems they have used, where they're storing the data. And one thing to note, though, that I really want to say is quite often stakeholders say, just put everything on your report, just put all the data on there. And the thing is, as I've put in this little picture, that's no good, because if without kind of a targeted focus, it loses its meaning, basically. And so scope creep is a massive issue in business intelligence. And so you really want to narrow down what the focus is. So some of the questions you might want to ask is, what are the top 3 problems that you have to solve? What are your main KPIs? And this is a prioritization matrix that I often use. So I basically look at what has the highest impact and is the easiest thing to do, and make that my first priority. And the things that have a lower impact and are quite challenging to do, consider eliminating them. You essentially need to become business literate. So you need to learn their job. You need to know what are their processes? When is that data inputted? How is it inputted? Who is putting it in? What systems are they using? Where is it stored? And you need to ask all these questions, and you need to find out how that data is traveling throughout the company. So it's data lifecycle. But at each point, make sure that you're speaking their language, you're using their terminology, so that they understand what you're talking about. Don't just speak in data or tech terms. So the next stage of what you want to do is you want to find out where the data is, and take an inventory of what data they have and who owns it, and basically where it lives. So that is called a data catalog, and that is done at the organization level. And then at the department level, you want to create something which is called a data dictionary. And this is where you define what the data is. So when I've put field here, I mean column name. So you have a column name and you define what that means. So for example, in the early example, when I gave about serving times, it would say serving start time, and define what that means. Is it when the order's placed, or etc. So this makes sure that everyone's consistent with the data definition. You don't get data silos. You don't get people gathering inconsistent data. The other thing I wanted to mention was, in business intelligence, quite often people wanted the report yesterday. And this is a methodology that was basically created in the late 90s. It's called CRISDM, and it was for data analysts and data scientists. And basically it talks about have an understanding of the business, then have an understanding of the data, prep the data, model the data, evaluate what you have, show the stakeholder, and you just keep following this process until you're ready for deploying your solution. However, at each stage, it emphasizes about documentation and things like that. But nowadays, I would say people follow this very loosely and combine it with like agile, iterative development, because as I say, business intelligence is very fast moving and you don't have time to spend in what we call in data in the weeds for so long before you start adding business value. Until you've actually shown something to the business, you're not really adding any value. So I would say just bring all the data together. It doesn't have to look pretty, just build something and show them and ask them, is this what you wanted? Because many times it isn't. And so you're not wasting everyone's time. You can do all the optimizing and, making everything nice later on. Another thing I wanted to mention was I see a lot in LinkedIn where people say don't build dashboards if there's not a proper business purpose. And one of the complaints that I've seen is people say, I just want to see my data. And I just say, I just think as a former business user, that is actually a legitimate query, a reason to have a dashboard. The reason why I say that is because if you have a new business or you've got new contracts, so basically you've got new data coming in and you've never seen what that data looks like. How do you know, for example, that you're categorizing that data correctly? So, for example, Chai and Coffee here, they've categorized their coffee according to product, but they've put their bakery goods in just one, they've lumped it in all one category called bakery. And so when they look at the visualization, they think, oh wow, bakery goods are doing so good, let's invest more in that so we can get more revenue. When actually, if you categorize all the coffee in one coffee group and the tea and then bakery, you can see actually the other two categories, coffee and tea, are bringing in most of the revenue. So, I mean, this is a simple example, but you can see how the consequences would be for other organizations. Another thing I wanted to point out was be careful if you're using Power BI, be careful with misleading data representation. A lot of the time when you don't have space on your report and you just put a little chart somewhere, Power BI truncates the y-axis, which then exaggerates what is happening to the stakeholder. So here it looks like there's a massive dip in revenue on Thursday, which can panic the business user. However, if you were to stretch that out, start at 80K, here I've put an average line here, which is 100K per day. And you can see that the revenue on Thursday dips to 97K, which isn't such a big dip in consideration that there's 100K average revenue coming in every day. So always look at visuals from the business point of view, not just in a data perspective. Think about what it's telling them. And I also wanted to say that you make sure you build for adoption, make sure you make it something that business users want to use. So have a landing page, do some storytelling. So you're doing like an overview and then you're looking deeper and deeper into the analytics. One thing important to remember in data is you always build for scale. You already know that Chai and Coffee want to expand. They may have regions in the future, so they might want slices saying regions. So always bear that in mind. And make it interactive, have good aesthetics. You might also want to implement row level security. So for example, the director can see everyone's data, whereas branch managers can only see their branch's data. And I've just put a cartoon here. Basically, the more information, the more overloaded your report is, the less people get out of it. And so here I want to talk about, you want to guide the user. Now, I've heard some people, some data professionals say, if a stakeholder doesn't know how to read a report or a dashboard, they need more training. And I'm here to say that I don't think that's the case. If I go to, if I download an app from Google, let's say, there's no user guide with there. It's just intuitive how I use it. It's the same thing with if I was to look at analytics in, a newsletter or something, and there's no user guide with it. It's just intuitive about how I should read it. And I feel like you should definitely help guide the user. This helps them become more data literate. So here I've put a trend line to show what the trend is. I put a little forecast here. Here I've highlighted what the highest revenue is. So basically we live in what we call like the Twitter generation, where content is being consumed in short formats. So for example, like YouTube Shorts. And also business users are busy. Frontline managers need to be, on the front line. And regional managers might always be, on the road. People are busy. They need to gain their insights at a glance. And so that you need to make sure that at a glance, they can get the insights that they need. There is a law in psychology called the Miller's Law, which says that the average human being can consume 5 to 7 bits of information at a time. And so you need to bear that in mind when you're building your reports. I also just wanted to make mention of UI and UX, because there was a principle called the F principle, which is here. And that's where you want to put your navigation and your main metrics that you want the business user to see. I just wanted to talk about Copilot in Power BI. So there is this movement in the data world called data democratization, and where people envision a future where there will be like self-service analytics. And what that means is in the future, business users can basically query, have a query and then get AI producing analytics and a summary for them. It is in preview at the moment. I have made it work for very simple data models. Let me show you what I mean. So in order to prepare for a future where there is going to be self-service analytics, we need to make sure that we're labeling our tables so that they make sense, and columns as well, so to make it easier for AI to retrieve the information. I just wanted to make mention that often on LinkedIn, I hear data professionals and others, some Power Platform people as well, complaining that stakeholders ask for export to Excel button in the report, and they find it very offensive. I just wanted to say, as a former business user, I think that's amazing when people ask for that. The people that ask for that tend to be very highly data literate. They want to use your report in a different way. They want to use the underlying data set. They're probably the only people who appreciate the hell you went through in data modeling to get that pretty dashboard. And they're so appreciative that you brought all this table of data from all different departments, brought it all together, made different relationships, and basically they're now at a position where they can create their own data model in Excel, perhaps, and even create their own visuals. What I would say is let them play about with the data set, and then after a couple of weeks, go up to them and say, oh, did you build anything, that suited you? Would you like me to implement that in the report? Because then it gives you a better idea of what works for them, and you can take that knowledge with you to another project. So it can be mutually beneficial. The other thing I wanted to mention was you should use hierarchies when you're building your report. And so, as I said earlier, you want like kind of an overview, and then you kind of want pages that are grouped together with analytics. So here, this is a page that's full of analytics for the products. You can also use drill through and drill down so that the users aren't overwhelmed with information. If they want more detail, that there's always a facility there for them to drill down. And here I've used some conditional formatting. So I've used gradient colors to basically highlight what the highest values are and what the lowest values are. So definitely build that into your reports. And that helps with their data literacy as well. And the last thing I wanted to mention about your report is often in business meetings, the managers are looking at a report and then someone says, oh, what's the start date of the next period again? And then someone else says, oh, what does that column mean again? Or how did they get that data again? And then you get people exiting the report, going on websites, or maybe going on Teams, contacting their colleague, trying to get clarification. And so what I would always say is try and build a comprehensive solution in Power BI. So ask your stakeholder, what information do you need to hand in your meetings? Would you like me to bring that into the report? So here I've put the data dictionary here, but you can also put hyperlink buttons to websites that they may need to refer to. Some people like reports embedded on their team SharePoint page, so they know that they're always going to keep on top of it and look at it. Some people like email subscriptions. So definitely ask the stakeholder what suits them. And here I've got an example of a report that's optimized for phone usage, for example, regional managers who are always on the road. And so in summary, you need to understand the business, their processes, how they collect data and what their challenges are. You need to meet them at their data maturity level. And you basically, so the culture change for data is quite a lengthy process, and you need to bring people on board. You need to make them understand. People don't do things without understanding why. So you need to make them understand, oh, this is why you need to enter the data in a certain way, or you need to follow this business process, because if you don't, then we won't get the data, then we won't meet our KPIs, then we won't meet our contract obligations for this client, and we may lose the contract. In those terms, you need to basically explain it in business terms, and then see what processes you need to iron out, and then look at solutions. So you can't do any of this in isolation. It needs to be a collaborative effort. And always when you're speaking, talking about data, speak their language, and make sure that you have a single source of truth when it comes to data, so people can trust what you're showing them. They know that they know they don't have to kind of second guess and kind of be suspicious of what you've put on the dashboard, that they know that is truly what the data is showing. And make sure you build in lockstep with your key stakeholders, so there's not at the end. I mean, I really feel that if at the end they really don't know how to use your report, and you've done documentation, you've done a demo, I just think you just haven't involved them enough in the development phase. Always report from a business perspective, and export to Excel is basically using your report in a different way. I've just listed here some books that I think are quite useful if you want to explore different topics in this area. So we have here Applied Microsoft BI for Power BI for Beginners. This is a really good book, Show Me the Numbers, if you want to know more about data visualization and how to represent data for business users. This book is a really good book that I'm reading at the moment, Supercharged Power BI for DAX and Power Query. And this book, the Data Warehouse Toolkit, this is a bit like a Bible in the data world when it comes to data modeling. This book was first published in the 1980s, but it is relevant today as it was then. And this is a very popular book at the moment, Humanizing Data Strategy, and it's all about data strategy and governance. And I've just listed some content creators and events that I think will be helpful if you want to know more. So I've cheekily put my own website at the top if you want to know more about a career in this area. Here is a really great YouTube channel called Guy in a Cube. It covers so many different aspects of Power BI, and actually some aspects of Fabric now too. The Devon and Cornwall Microsoft User Group, which is actually happening now, is a really, really good user group, and they're very well established. They have high profile speakers, and actually in a couple of weeks they're doing a session which is on integrating Power BI with the Power Platform. So I think this might be useful to many of you. This guy I have to give credit to, Gilbert Eikelenboom. I basically used his cartoons for this presentation, but he's a really good person to follow if you want to know issues that people have with data. And if you want to practice Power BI and you want a data set, this is a really good website, Maven Analytics. This is where I got my data set for this presentation from. And finally, this event is such a great event to go to. It's called Big Data London. It happens every year in September. It's completely free. People all over the world come to this event, and it covers every single aspect of data, from data culture to AI to data visualization to recruitment. And basically, most organizations are generating data. So you are going to find something that's relevant to you. And it's, you know, it's so well catered. I've never seen an event as well catered as this one. You know, you've got vegan free, gluten free, you've even got a prayer room, you have a quiet room for neurodiversity. It is truly amazing. And you've got cafes, there's even a bookshop there. So, I mean, I can't recommend it enough. So if you can, definitely go to this. And that's it. So thank you very much for Chai and Coffee for helping them with their problems. And thank you for viewing my presentation. So are there any questions?
Thanks, Shamim. That was great. Your screen's gone back onto Meg's.
Okay.
Oh, can you stop sharing?
Oh, am I stop sharing? Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Comments?
I do, but it's not a very serious one. Shamim, what's your favourite graph?
What's my favourite graph? I can tell you what I hate. I hate the pie chart. I hate it. But I try, if they really insist, I do like a donut chart with like a, because if you think about it, you're asking the users to compare angles. I mean, how complicated is that? That's just, you know, anyway. Yeah, I hate pie charts. But my favorite chart is probably your bog standard column chart, to be honest with you. I just, you know, yeah, that's my favorite one. They always want pie charts.
Donut like yes. Pie charts? Anyone in opposition to that?
Oh, pie charts are crap.
They're horrible. They're horrible. Why? Yeah.
As I say, the entrance then was really useful. Shamim.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I covered so much in there, but I mean, all these topics, I mean, 14 minutes, it doesn't do justice. If you really want to read on how to implement data strategy, or even the best way to do data visualization, there's so much out there, you know, to help, but they're all massive topics by itself.
I think it's really useful for this audience because we have a lot about Power Apps and Power. There's less content on here for Power BI, and
yeah,
there is crossover.
Yeah, and this is what that's why I put that slide about my perspective, because I do see Power Platform tools as data tools, and so when I hear that Power BI doesn't belong, I'm like, what? No, but that helps me so much, you know, when it comes to me, to the reporting stage, you know, and someone's built a Power App, you know, that data is so much cleaner. So yeah, it's interesting.
That is precisely why I got into developing Power Apps in the first place, because I was doing Power BI reports and the data I was dealing with was absolute crap. So I was like, well, sod it, I'll just build a Power App and get the data ingestion that way, and then I can build a report off the back of that. And it worked seamlessly. It was really well for data standardization. That's the important thing about Power Apps in my books.
Yeah.
Just get things tidy and away from Excel.
Sorry, I forgot to mention something that I really wanted to tell you guys. But anyway, so I used to work in an organization where everyone knew their employee number, like literally everyone knew. So when you called a department, they wouldn't ask you your name, they wouldn't ask you why you're calling, what's your employee number. And therefore, that little change in their data culture meant that you could track that employee, their whole life cycle throughout the whole entire organization. Because everyone knew their employee number. And it just goes to show the little, you know, changes that you can make improves that quality and the trust in the data so much. So yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in the presentation.
Hi, Judy.
I thought I had my camera figured out, but apparently I don't, and I'm embarrassed to see this wonderful room. First of all, Shamim, that was absolutely brilliant what you did in such a short time.
Oh, thank you. I hope I didn't rush through it. I know it was like information overload.
You rushed, but you didn't rush. And I found that really helpful to be in your audience. So thank you for that. But the comment I wanted to make, I guess I might as well turn off my camera, is that I totally understand what you mean by business people needing to see where their data is, to have that understanding. So just to share my experience as a business analyst, regardless if it's Power Platform or any custom application, is one of the first things I do sometimes is, and it's going to kind of show my age, I think, is the business process engineering and how people map with the swim lanes. And that was kind of useful, and you kind of usually have some workshops for that. But what I found more recently is doing user story mappings or customer journeys. But basically, I really resonate with what you said, because it helps people resonate and relate to what's happening by telling their story to us, and we can then pinpoint or help them bring out their challenges and issues, and everyone's on the same page, because they, like, and it is having to see a picture, a visual, and to step them through that. So it really helps facilitate that, but it's the understanding that is so important for everyone to understand, especially us, the implementers, so we can understand them and their business speak. So much of what you said resonated with me, but also what you shared was so insightful for me. So I also want to really thank you for that.
That's okay. That's a great comment. Thanks, Judy.
That's awesome. I don't know, did I mention this at the start of the call? We've had people join, but this was Shamim's first presentation to a user group.
Yeah, it was.
So well done.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've never done one
Fantastic.
publicly.
I've been we've been talking about this for a while, haven't we? So
Yeah, you have. Yeah. So
yeah.
without Sarah's encouragement, I don't think I would have done it.
Encouragement, nagging, maybe. I'm
No,
really
Sarah,
proud
you're
of you. Well
brilliant.
done.
Honestly, you're really brilliant. You're a great advocate for newbies in this space. So thank you.
It's important. I think it's important to have a safe space, and there's plenty of there's other opportunities as well if anybody's looking to speak for the first time, either here or in some of the user groups. I can see Ian joined at the last minute. He's up in the northeast, runs a cool user group up there around Dynamics and Power Platform. Now,
even saw some sun today in the northeast.
What's that?
Even saw some sun today.
You saw the sun, did you? Yeah, it's been beautiful here. I hope you've all had sun. We're dotted all over the place. Right, I'm panicking. I'm going to forget to do the high five photo because he's not here to manage me. So
it's good you remembered. I completely forgot.
Yes.
It's been on my mind the whole time. It was first thing till I just get into the meeting and
You
let
need to put
everybody in.
post-it notes around your device saying high five, high five.
I've got a notepad, but I've not got any sticky ones. So anyway, I remembered. So would everyone mind putting the camera on to do a little high five shot, and I'll try and capture it. Judy, I know you can't get your camera on. Okay, right. Here goes. High five, guys. Okay, I think I've done it. Hang on. Can you imagine having to train me in some sort of IT department, honestly? But no, cool, got it. Right, thank you so much to everybody who came. Thank you, Meg and Shamim.
Yes.
Meg also recorded a podcast which is going live on Tuesday next week with Misfits, so shout out to Meg on that. It's really worth a listen, actually. More AI stuff and 90-day mentoring challenge and more. So have a great evening, everybody, and we'll see you. Oh, I did have another slide. Next month we've got Sharon with Lindsay and Kaylee doing their session about moving from an end user into Microsoft partner. That's a really worthwhile session, so looking forward to that. And the other speaker, I've got so fatigued with this today. is Stuart Baxter, actually. He's going to be joining us. I think he did this on Allies as well, and it's his GDS musical, I think he calls it, featuring the Spice Girls. So I'm looking forward to that.
I can't believe you're putting me and Stuart on the same billing.
I know.
Oh,
Yeah,
we'll
we
talk
definitely
about
need Keith to supervise that one because I'm just not going to be concentrating. It should be good fun. I'll let you all get on with your evenings though. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the support, and thanks so much to the speakers as well.
That's
Yes,
grand, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Shamim.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye,
Great
everyone.
presentations.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks all.